we'll be moving into a panel discussion and then a community conversation with Q&A. But prior to that, we have a very busy day in West Hollywood as usual with many events scheduled, but Mayor Erickson has joined us, and we really appreciate and giving him an opportunity to say hello.
Thank you. Don't all clap at once. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much, Councilmember Meister and Vice Mayor Byers. Councilmember Meister, when this was on the agenda, I think it's so great to see it in fruition. What a great project, and holy moly, what you just said, like, wow. Do you want a job at the city? I mean, you are brilliant. I'm so sad. I can't wait to tune in to the other presentations. It is a very busy day. We've had tree planting. I had a park event. I mean, lots of stuff going on. I think some of our planning staff and commissioners just spent the night from Thursday to Friday. So, Commissioner Hoopen-Gardner, kudos to you for still walking after some long meetings in our planning staff. But thank you all to our amazing neighbors and community for coming out. Such an important event in how we save water, and the 200% increase that we're seeing, and our partnerships with LA County and how they continue to help us increase how we access water is huge. Some of the water is still in my apartment from the rain, so that's another issue as we update our infrastructure. But thank you, thank you, thank you. It's great to see you all, and I hope you have a great community session, and looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, so if I can invite our speakers and Vice Mayor Byers and Councilmember Meister to come forward. Okay, so we're going to spend approximately 15 minutes or so, plus or minus, kind of diving a little bit deeper into some of the topics that the speakers presented, and then we will have a mic that we will pass around to answer some of the community questions and thoughts as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Mayor Byers and Councilmember Meister.
So first of all, I live in HC1. Anyone wanting to buy some credits? I'm there. I'm ready. Okay, so I'm going to start this off. What we're going to do is direct the questions to one or two of you, but then if anyone else wants to jump in, absolutely, please feel free. So this is directed to Kim and Edith. At the policy level, given the city of West Hollywood's linear span, unique topography, and downhill foothill slopes, are there specific initiatives or programs that make sense here that we should be focusing on in the future?
Let's see. I think we've heard a lot about the potential of stormwater capture, and I'm going to let the engineers and architects speak on that. But as far as what we're seeing in West Hollywood and Southern California and California in general, there's a lot of potential with water conservation. And I think, as Hadley mentioned, it is the lowest hanging fruit, the least costly, and potentially one of the strongest sources of water. And there's really wonderful organizations here. West Basin Municipal Water District has some incredible incentives, as well as the Metropolitan Water District. And I know City of West Hollywood yourselves has provided incentives for tree planting in the past. So I see that as a huge potential. It just means using a little bit less water, and a big part of that is public engagement campaigns and the effectiveness that you've seen with some West Hollywood has employed.
So I would add that I think you have really unique opportunities to explore how the climate impacts on water and that swing from flood to famine, and the climate impacts of extreme heat could maybe be co-solved. I'm not one of the engineers trying to figure out the dewatering issue, but if you look at some of the extremely arid parts of the Southwest, they would probably really love to have that problem. So my mind goes to the possibility of maybe demonstrating linear parks that both take advantage of that water, maybe through passive irrigation. You can look at cities like Tucson, Arizona, that have incorporated sort of connectivity between tree well basins where the water can, the surface level of the street and the tree well itself is a little lower and the curb is cut. We've tried that in LA a bit, but I think we've done it in such a mechanical way. There's, I think, a more soft path way of inviting water in. When it soaks in and sufficiently irrigates the tree, it moves on to the next one. But I would also say, we don't have much of the opportunity in the LA region to use water works as a cooling mechanism, but in other cities and other regions around the world, we do see that. So again, and some of what Miriam showed in terms of inviting that connection to water, if there are mechanisms literally to move that dewatered sort of source into this more surface level passive irrigation, but also literally waterworks that you can see, that blue infrastructure can be a very effective cooling strategy as well. And it would be so cool to try it out in West Hollywood. And I'll just add, I don't know what the history of West Hollywood's attempt to try to get some of the Safe Clean Water program funding has been, but that would be something to really look at. We have Measure W that was passed in 2018. LA County voters taxed themselves. It's incredible that we did this, and now we have a perpetual fund to support green infrastructure. And so it would be so cool to use Hadley's, very powerful model, zoom into West Hollywood, see where it makes sense to move from those less appropriate zones to those more appropriate zones. Maybe you'll get some credit by selling your H1, HZ, whatever one. So those are some thoughts about that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in?
All right, I've got the next question. We're learning our acronyms, but LID, or Low Impact Development, and Best Management Practices are code requirements for new construction. So for Miriam or Hadley, but anyone's welcome to jump in. From a design perspective, what are the most reasonable nature-based solutions for on-site water management that are implementable at a reasonable cost?
I think rain tanks and rain barrels are great. I think we often struggle just finding the space, but just knowing that you have to plan for it, it's not insurmountable. And I think infiltration is great as well.
And the question was specifically about retaining water on site. Is that correct?
On-site water management.
Got it. So I also want to say that Edith and all her years at Tree People also probably has a tremendous amount to bring to that conversation. But
Hold on, your mic's not on, it seems. It's on. It's on. Here. There you go.
on site, I agree, of course, with rain barrels, and there have been wonderful incentives available over time to reduce the cost of those and do pilot programs and getting them in. I also have enjoyed seeing what the marvelous minds in design studios at schools do with, what should I do with this rain barrel? It's really big, it's blocking my side yard, or what other benefits can I get out of it? And seeing amazing proposals like creating shared fence lines of water cisterns shared by residents adjacent to each other, and then looking at how is it that I shape my roofs to actually feed those, and from there, what am I generating as a courtyard or a shared permeable place that enhances the quality of life for my apartment building and neighbors. So I feel like, yes, rain barrel, and it can be so much more and can be leveraged to do so much work.
Thank you. For Lainey, subsidence, differential settlement, and dewatering operations have been a hot topic in the city, especially in areas with high water tables. Are there newer construction methods, techniques, or procedures that the city could be considering going forward to mitigate unintended consequences?
Yeah, good question. I know that I didn't get into a ton of the details of how it works and how the engineers and the contractors and everybody work together to figure these sort of things out. So I'm glad I have a time to do that now. But basically, how it works usually is there will be there'll be a design by the engineer. The geotechnical engineers will do a study. They'll figure out how much groundwater there is, what the soils are like. It's all pretty complicated. In that report that they do during design, before they construct anything, they'll say, we have water at this level. To construct this basement, this building, you're going to have to decrease the water level by dewatering or blocking or something by a certain amount, and this will probably have an effect of however many feet, miles, whatever, for your radius of influence of those wells. And so based on that information, the engineer and the contractor can kind of work together to figure out what are the impacts of that and are they going to be too impactful, right? And I think that where the city comes in on this is they can probably help with some of the standards and the policies around that process. So for example, I'm a little bit more familiar with like the city of Palo Alto. They have some of their own dewatering regulations, which is basically like a specification that a contractor will use when building or when designing what their dewatering plan is going to be. So some of the things they have in their regulations are like there's a maximum amount of a rate of flow they can pull from the ground. The rate makes a big difference on whether there could be subsidence or not. They have a maximum radius of influence that they can have, and the contractor and the engineer have to show the calculations to what the impact might be, what the levels might be. In order to make sure that they're meeting those, the contractor has to come up with a plan, and they have to monitor that. So they have to have piezometers on site, which monitors the groundwater levels in real time, so you can see how the levels are changing while you're constructing. There's also things that can measure the actual potential subsidence if that's going to occur. You can have little basically ground markers. You can do a survey before construction starts to see what the levels are at different places, and then if you report that there are lowering levels, first of all you stop and then you reevaluate what can we do to mitigate that problem. Or you can do something like crack monitoring in buildings around and see what do the cracks look like before we construct, is there any at all, and then after we construct or during the process, are we seeing cracks forming, and if you are, again, stop, reevaluate, how can we mitigate those things. So there's definitely a lot of things you can do. I would say it'd be definitely in partnership with the contractors and the engineers designing these though.
Just to follow up, one of the models that we've heard about, development models, when a developer is going down 3 or 4 levels or more, is the bathtub model to keep out water. I know this is a question that a lot of our residents have asked me. If the water has to go around, it's finding a new way of travel. What does that do to those surrounding trees and landscape around it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a little bit different of a question. So groundwater, I think it's hard to kind of picture because we can't see it, right? But it's basically a huge bathtub, a huge basin. You could picture a lake, if that helps you, underground. And when you do something like put in a bathtub, a basement, and you put in something that is not going to allow water through, there's a direction at which the groundwater flows. So if the groundwater is flowing this way through what that basement's going to be, then instead of going through, it's going to go around, and then the water levels upstream are going to be a little bit higher, and the water levels downstream are going to be a little bit lower because they're having to go around. So that's something that should definitely be considered when you're going to build that kind of system. If that's going to be a problem, if that change in water levels would be an issue for the other buildings or plants or anything around there, there are things you can do to mitigate that. You can look into having, instead of pushing it around, you can let it subdrain into it, and then you could recharge it back into the other side. You can look at over irrigating the trees or something on the other side if that's going to be an issue. But that's kind of how it works. And I think something that's important to note is that because it's hard to picture, it seems like it could be really drastic. However, like if you picture a really big lake, the amount of displacement of water, the differences in levels is sort of would be more similar to like a boat in a lake. It's not really going to change it that much because of the volume of a basement compared to the volume of the entire groundwater basin.
I've got the next question, and I want to preface this because I think folks in the during the break, I heard this also. West Hollywood has a majority of multifamily buildings. We also have neighborhoods of single-family homes. But I think just in thinking about the context of West Hollywood, for smaller scale urban infill lots like those found in West Hollywood, this question's for Hadley. What would be the most environmentally beneficial or ecologically impactful on-site water management solutions?
So I am basically here to assert, I beg your pardon, is this working? I think sort of in a way my purpose here is to say, don't tie it to a building typology, tie it to the biophysical necessities and be sure you have access to that data, and let's get to the right decision faster. So tying it to, there's a one-size-fits-all for multifamily or for single-family dwelling, in my view, would be a grave mistake. That looking at it as a networked whole is the huge opportunity. There are going to be other challenges that come up, including crossing over from private, managing water on within the boundaries of private property and publicly owned, publicly accessed land. Rick spoke to that earlier with one of your, I think probably the Heat Island seminar, and then policy that you all have been doing here, or tree canopy, but needing to blur these boundaries continually between, you may be on a private piece of land, but there is a larger public whole we're working into, and we need to kind of reconceive that really hard and fast distinction between the two. I hope that answered the question.
Can I tack on to that? Great, yeah. Thanks. One of the things that we see is that multifamily housing units have significantly less water usage than single-family housing units. And landscaping is one of the reasons for that. But also, there's fixtures of the building that help with water conservation that naturally consume less. And something that I found really interesting is shared laundry spaces make it so that residents use substantially less water than having laundry in their own unit. And that's present in probably many multifamily units already in the city of West Hollywood. It's about 30% difference, significantly different. And you can think about it, right? Like if you have to go downstairs to do your laundry, you're probably gonna wait to do it until you have a larger load. So there's, things that just come with multifamily units that do show benefits.
Convenience as a form of conservation.
Yes, yeah, convenience and cost savings.
Okay.
I would just add quickly that for reuse, stormwater, gray water, black water, all of them, there's sort of an economy of scale from the residential single-family home site where like maybe a rain barrel and just using that for your plants. Or I know City of San Diego had a good program where you didn't even have to have a permit to just pipe your gray water from your laundry straight to subsurface in your backyard, which is very cool. But like there's an economy of scale, so multifamily homes or like campus level type buildings start to get to that scale where you would actually want to look into building some treatment plants, which is more expensive, but you're gonna offset more water use, and it's more like, there's a centralized treatment plant for a whole city. This would be like a small centralized treatment plant for a larger building or campus. So you finding that economy of scale with water offset and cost is really important.
I think we have time for one quick last one because I want to make sure the community has plenty of time to.
Sure.
Ask
Okay,
the questions.
last question. Projecting into the future, partnerships or strategic alliances seem most promising to better solve water resource management challenges at the regional level. Where might West Hollywood best look to strengthen connections and have the most beneficial impact? Kim or Edith?
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on this one. And I think Hadley touched on it a little bit in your presentation when you're looking at special assessment districts. There's a special form of tax increment financing districts in California that was just enabled. They're called Climate Resilience Districts, CRDs. And when they're formed, it results in no new taxes for residents. Basically, the new people in the community will get their property reassessed. It would be reassessed anyway. That portion that goes from what the property was taxed before to what it's taxed now can go to climate adaptation and resilience, in infrastructure investments. And what's special about climate resilience districts is it's not just the infrastructure itself, it's operations and maintenance. So by having this mechanism, you can create new infrastructure and maintain it in a way that doesn't adversely impact your property taxes.
That's great.
So I would say your first partnership is going to be with Hadley and Peter Arnold, because they've already done incredible work to sort of quantify what the potential is for West Hollywood, but I bet you we've just scratched the surface with what Hadley shared today. The other partnership that I would encourage the city to look into is to connect with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California and the LA Department of Water and Power about their plans that they're drawing right now around advanced water treatment for recycled water. Decisions are being made in the coming months to determine how the various advancements in wastewater treatment are going to be cited. And there are more centralized sorts of plans and more distributed plans, and it would be very interesting to see whether West Hollywood could be part of that more distributed approach, and how that might be able to benefit not only the larger network that the region is trying to build, but specifically how you might be able to be a place that provides that space and that opportunity.
Okay, turn it back over. All right. Well, thank you, Vice Mayor Byers and Councilmember Meister, for bringing us together today. Yes.